Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next week. Today, we're doing chapters 13 and chapter 14. Hopefully, you're having a great week. Don't forget to go back and do any of your assignments you're missing because we are coming to the end of our term. This is Language Matters. Ask any professional speaker or writer, and they'll tell you that language matters. In fact, some of the most important and memorable lines in American history came from speeches given by American presidents. It's true that you may fool all the people some of the time, but you can fool all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. Do you know who said that? Do. Anybody know? Bush. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. So sorry, let me see what happened here. Lost my spot. Just started. Okay. All right, so last week we did outlining, and today we're talking about listening. The importance of language. Abraham Lincoln originally said that, and then Bush Jr. repeated that. We had speak softly and carry a big stick. Theodore Roosevelt said that. The only thing we have is fear itself. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. John F. Kennedy said that. We lose ourselves when we compromise the very details that we fight to defend, and we honor those ideals by upholding them, not when easy, but when hard. Barack Obama said that. You don't have to be president or a famous speaker to use the language effectively. So in this chapter, we're going to explore the importance of language. First, we will discuss the difference between oral and written language, and then we're going to talk about some of the basic guidelines for using language. Lastly, we'll look at 6 key elements of language, and then we'll go on to chapter 14. I do want to remind you that when we speak orally, we can add the emphasis, we can add the dialect, we can add the expression, and we can also add nonverbals, which written is very bland and it only consists of words and meaning. But when we add people's voices to it, it can change it. Sometimes it could change it for the better, sometimes it could change it for the worse. When we use the word language, we're referring to the words that you chose to use in your speech. So by definition, your focus is spoken language. Spoken language always existed prior to the written language. We have Wrench, McCosby, and Richard suggested that if we think about the human history of language as 12-inch ruler, written language or recorded language has only existed the last quarter of an inch. Furthermore, the only more than 6,000 languages that are spoken around the world today, only a majority of them actually use written alphabet. To help us understand the importance of language, let's first look at the basic language, and then we'll develop from the differences between the oral and the written language. Buddy? Buddy? You guys see the dog in the background? He's a German Shepherd. Yes, I have 3 cats and a dog. So moving right along. We have connotative and denotative language. Denotative is like what the dictionary definition means. And we can find that meaning there and it's the same. But then we have connotative, and that's different. That's the idea suggested by associating with the word. In addition, we have state of expression, feeling blue, indication of winning a blue ribbon, or as side during the World War, blues versus grays, or set an event out of the blues. I'll stop there for a second. I have a video to show you.
And MailChimp's got more easy.
We're going to look at the difference between connotative versus denotative meaning and why it should matter to you as an emerging leader. So let's get into those details. Hello there friends, Alex Lyon here. And if this is your first time tuning into this channel, it's called Communication Coach because it is here for emerging leaders, probably like you. Today we're talking about communication, specifically the difference between connotative and denotative meaning. As a leader, your words matter, and really everything you say is under a microscope when you are in leadership. So we'll talk about the definitions, we'll give some examples, and then we'll talk about what you can actually do with this information, because it's really important. So let's start with the definitions of connotative meaning, and that is the range of positive or negative associations and emotional shades of meaning of a word. So the words that we use have a charge, positive or negative. There's some that are neutral, I suppose, but in most cases, the words that we use have a color to them, and they're going to impact and influence the way people feel when they hear them. That's quite different from the denotative meaning, which is the literal, precise definition you'd expect to find in a dictionary. A quick way to remember the difference between these is that dictionary starts with the letter D, and so does denotative. That's the way I remember it. So connotative and denotative meanings are quite different. Let's look at some examples to show you just how far apart these meanings can be. So we'll start with some common but controversial words. The first word is taxes, and let me read to you the denotative or dictionary definition. Compulsory contribution to state revenue levied by the government on workers' income and business profits or added to the cost of some goods, services, and transactions. Now, as an American, that definition of taxes means very little to me. When I hear the word taxes, it really has a negative connotation. I mean, we had a tea party over this, and we, had this revolution over taxes. So there's a lot of emotion packed inside the word taxes for us. Everyone has a slightly different understanding of this word depending upon who you are, where you're from, but you can't deny that the first time you saw your first paycheck and you thought it was going to have a certain amount in it because of the hours you worked, and then you saw that they took a bunch of taxes out of it, you instantly developed a feeling about the word taxes, and that feeling or the connotative meanings associated with it. Let's look at another example. Social media. Here's the denotative meaning behind social media. Websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. So again, that's denotative. But the connotative meaning behind social media can be different depending upon who you are. It could mean something very positive, like connecting with people, or it could mean drama, misinformation, and wasted time. Again, the connotative meaning is really the one that hits us, either positive or negative. There's an emotional charge associated with many words. Let's look at another definition. Bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is like a dirty word where I come from. I hate that word, but the dictionary definition sounds quite ordinary and even very dry. A system of government in which most of the important decisions are made by state officials rather than by elected representatives. That's one definition, one denotative meaning of the word bureaucracy. But when I hear the word bureaucracy, I think about a slow and pointless system of steps that's made to discourage individual action. So that word is loaded with connotative meaning for me. So those are some differences in the examples that we're talking about. So why does this matter for us? Well, it matters because you choose your words as a leader, and you can choose words to have a positive influence if you know what you're aiming for. So when it comes to motivation, word choice matters. There's an old saying, the right word at the right time is like a custom-made piece of jewelry. And that reminds me of a professor that I had, a good friend and a mentor, Peter Marston. When in grad school, he was talking about Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, and he said, quote, "If the speech had been called I Have an Idea, nobody would have remembered it." And what he means by that is word choice matters, and the word dream has a lot of positive and powerful connotative meaning behind it, and it really connects with people's hearts in a way that the word, quote, idea does not. Now, there's no way to tell in advance what exact words you should use because every situation is a little different. But what you can do as a leader is aim for those positive connotative words.
Okay, now we're going to go back to the book and we're going to watch a video also. Okay. So we had connotative meaning, it's ideas suggested by the association of a word. In addition to examples above, blue can evoke many ideas. We talked about that. And the man in the video, the speaker, he just talked about the word bureaucracy and how he connotates it with something bad, but yet the dictionary doesn't make it like something bad. There's 12 ways oral and written language differ. The second important aspect is to understand language. Oral used in public speaking and written language used in text. It does not function the same way. Try a brief experiment. Take a textbook, maybe even this one, and read out loud. And then when the text is read aloud, it does sound conversational. Probably not. Public speaking, on the other hand, should sound like a conversation. McCroskey, Wrench, and Richmond highlighted the following 12 differences that exist between oral and written language. Oral language is a smaller variety of words. Oral language has words with fewer syllables. Oral language has shorter sentences. Oral language has a more self-reference words like I, me, and mine. Oral language has fewer quantifying terms or precise numerical words. Oral language has a pseudo-qualifying terms like many, few, and some. And oral language has some extreme and superlative words like none, all, every, always, and never. Oral language has more quantifying statements, clauses beginning with less or except. Oral language has more repetition of words and syllables. Oral language uses more contradictions. Oral language has more introductions like, whoa, really? No, you're kidding. That's where we can add those exclamation marks and give it some expression. Oral language has more colloquial and non-standard words. Like these differences exist primarily because people listen and read information differently. First, when you read information, you don't grasp the content the first time. You have the ability to reread the section. When we are listening to information, we don't have the ability to rewind life and re-listen to the information. Second, when you read information, if you do not understand the concept, you can look up the concept in a dictionary or online and gain the knowledge easily. However, we don't always have the ability to walk around with the internet and look up concepts we don't understand. Therefore, oral communication should be simple enough to be easily understood for the moment by a specific audience without study or information. Language is important in every aspect of our lives because it allows people to communicate in a manner that enables sharing of common ideas. Denotative definitions are agreed upon. Meaning of words are often found in dictionaries, whereas connotative definitions involve individual perceptions of words. Misunderstanding commonly occurs when the source of a message intends one denotative or connotative meaning, and the receiver of the message applies a different denotative or connotative meaning of the same word or words. Oral language is designed to be a listener and the sound conversational, which means the word choice must be simpler, more formal, more repetitive. Written language uses larger vocabulary and is more formal. One of the first questions you ask yourself is whether the language you plan on using speech fits your own speaking pattern. Not all language choices are appropriate for all speakers. The language you select should be suitable for you, not someone else. At the first year college student, there's no need to force yourself to sound like a astrophysicist, even if you're given a speech on new planets. One of the biggest mistakes novice speakers make is thinking they have to use $1 million words because it makes them sound smarter. Actually, $1 million words don't tend to function well in oral communication to begin with. So using them will probably make you uncomfortable as a speaker. Also may be difficult for you as an audience to understand the nuances of meaning when you use such a word. So using them can increase the risk of denotative and connotative misunderstandings. Appropriate for the audience, the second aspect of appropriateness, ask whether the language you are choosing is appropriate for your specific audience. Let's say you're an engineering student. If you're giving a presentation in engineering class, you can use a language that other engineering students will know. On the other hand, if you use engineering vocabulary in a public speaking class, Many audience members will not understand you. As an example, you are speaking about the Great Depression to an audience of young adults. You can't assume they will know the meanings like New Deal or WPA, which is familiar to the audience of senior citizens. In the chapters of the book, we explained the importance of audience analysis. Once again, audience analysis is a key factor in choosing the language to use in a speech, appropriate for the context. The next question about appropriateness is whether the language you use is suitable or fitting for the context itself. The language you employ, if you are addressing a student assembly in high school auditorium, will differ from the language you would use in a business meeting at a hotel ballroom. If you're given a speech outdoor rally, you can use the same speech you would in the classroom. Recall the speaking context that includes the occasion, the time of day, the mood of the audience, and other factors in addition to the physical location. Take the entire speaking context in consideration when you make the language choices or your speech. Appropriate for the topic, the fourth and final question of the appropriateness of the language involves whether it makes sense to use sophisticated language, and whether the topic is basic introduction to the physics, say sound or light waves. After appropriateness, the second guideline for using language is to use vivid language. Vivid language helps the listeners create strong, distinct, clear, and memorable mental images. Good vivid language usage help an audience member truly understand and imagine what a speaker is saying. Two common ways to make your speaking more vivid are through the use of imagery and rhythm. Imagery is the use of language to represent objects, actions, and ideas. The goal of imagery is to help an audience member create a mental picture of what the speaker is saying. A speaker who uses imagery successfully will tap into one or more of the audience's 5 basic senses: hearing, taste, touch, smell, and sight. And 3 common tools of imagery are concreteness, simile, and metaphor. When we use language as concrete, we attempt our audiences to see specific realities or actual instances instead of abstract theories and ideas. The goal of correctness is to help you as a speaker show your audience something instead of just telling them. Imagine you decided to give a speech on the importance of freedom. You could easily stand up and talk about philosophical work of Rudolf Steiner, who divided the ideas of freedom into the freedom of thought and freedom of action. If you're like us, even reading the sentence can make you want to go to sleep. Instead of defining those terms and meaning, discussing philosophical merits of Steiner, you could use real examples where people's freedom to think or freedom to behave has been stifled. For example, you could talk about how Afghani women under Taliban rule have been denied access to education, or those seeking education have risked public flogging and execution. You could further illustrate Afghani women under Taliban who are forced to adhere to rigid interpretations of Islamic law that functionally limit their behavior. Okay, we have simile. A second form of imagery is simile. You probably learned English courses, simile. It uses a like or as. The thunderous applause was like a party among the gods. Or after the revolution, she was angry as a raccoon caught in a cage. Love is like a battlefield. All of those are using like and as. We use like or as within the comparison. Metaphor, the commonly used word of metaphor, love is a battlefield. So there's no like or as, but you're still comparing. Upon hearing the charges, accuse calmness. Every year, a new crop of activists are born. Students grow up their way through the maze and courses of the catalog. Students feast on the abundance of courses in the catalog. Also, you could do rhythm. Our second guideline of effective language is speech should use rhythm. When most people think about rhythm, they immediately think of music. What they may not realize is that language is inherently musical, or at least it refers to be. Rhythm refers to pattern, recurring variances of elements of sound or speech, whether someone is striking a drum with a you analyze his or her speaking pattern, you'll notice there's a certain cadence in the speech, while much of the cadence is a result of nonverbal components of speaking. Let's examine these 4 types: parallelism, repetition, alteration, adolescence. We have parallelism. When listening to items in sequence, audiences will respond more strongly when these ideas are presented in grammatically parallel fashion, which is referred to as parallelism. For example, look at the following 2 examples. Determine which is better for you. Give me liberty or I'd rather die. Give me liberty or give me death. Technically, you're saying the same thing in both, but the second has a better rhythm. And comes from parallel construction of give me. The lack of parallelism in the first example makes the sentence sound disjoint and ineffective. As we mentioned earlier in the chapter, one of the major differences between the oral and the written language is the use of repetition. Repetition is a linguistic device. It's designed to help audiences become familiar with the short piece of the speech as they hear it over and over again. By repeating a phrase during a speech, you create a specific rhythm. Probably the most famous and memorable use of the rhythm is a speech by Martin Luther King Jr., I Have a Dream. And his speech in Lincoln Memorial in August 1963 during the March of Washington for Jobs of Freedom. In that speech, Martin Luther King Jr. repeated the phrase, I have a dream, 8 times to great effect. Another type of rhythmic language is alteration, or repeating 2 or more words in a series that begins with the second consonant. In Harry Potter's series, the author uses alliteration to name 4 wizards who founded the school of witchcraft and wizardry: Garda Gryffindor, Helena Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. And the 2 basic types of alliteration: immediate juxtaposition and non-immediate juxtaposition. Immediate juxtaposition occurs when consonants clearly follow one another, like we see in Harry Potter's example. Non-immediate juxtaposition occurs when the consonants are repeated and not adjacent words. It's the poison that we must purge from our politics, the wall that we must tear down before the hour grows too late. A child being born in America, let it cause to give that child a happy home, a healthy family, and a hopeful future. Innocence is similar to alliteration, but instead of relying on consonants, it in a sense gets rhythm from repeating the same vowel sounds with different consonants and the stressed syllables. The phrase, how now brown cow, and elocation students traditionally use to learn the pronouns of the rounded words. Rhymes like free as a breeze and mad as a hatter and no pain, no game are examples of addisons. Speakers should be wary of relying on addisons because it is overused. It can quickly turn to bad poetry. You can use inclusive language. Inclusive language can inspire listeners to turn them off very quickly. One of the fastest way to alienate an audience is through the use of non-inclusive language. Inclusive language is language that avoids placing one group of people above or below the other groups while speaking. Let's look at some common problem areas relate to the gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disabilities. So we never want to be too specific because then we're going to leave people out. Like using he could leave out the she's for people that are between. Use of man. We want to try to stay away from that and use inclusive words that includes everybody. Like instead of businessman, business police officer, businessman, business person, people, fireman, firefighter, stewardess could be flight attendant, waiters, wait staff or servers, mailman is letter carrier. I've heard postal carrier and postal worker, and a barmaid, we usually say bartenders. Also, stay away from any of the offensive language from the past, like handicap. They want to be called people with disabilities. So we put the person first before their label. Insane person is a person with psychiatric disability, like a person with schizophrenia, person in a wheelchair. We would say person who uses a wheelchair. Crippled, you would just say a person with a physical disability. Special needs as accessible needs program. I've heard of other abilities. I've heard of that. I worked at a place called Crippled Children's Society, and they changed the name to Ability First. Mentally retarded would be person with intellectual disability. We always put the person first before their description or their label. Use appropriate language. That means the speaker's language is suitable and fitting to themselves as a speaker, an audience, creating content, speaking content, and speech itself. Vivid language helps listeners create mental images. And this could be the concreteness, simile, metaphor, and rhythm, parallelism, repetition, alliteration, and science. Inclusive language avoids placing any one group of people above or below another group while speaking. As such, speakers need to think about how they refer to various groups within a society. Using familiar language is important for the speaker because familiar language will make a speaker more comfortable, which will improve audience perceptions of the speech. Clarity, the first important element of language is clarity, or the use of language to make sure the audience understands the speaker's ideas the way the speaker intended. Language or verbal communication, only one channel we can transmit information. This channel lends to itself numerous problems. Also, be sure you don't use obscenity, indecent language, maybe curse words, pornographic references, anything that would be obscene. You don't want to offend certain populations of people. Also, make sure you don't use particular jargon that people aren't familiar to, like a plethora of ideas. People might not know what plethora is, especially if they're English as a second language. We want to use terms that people understand. Don't use acronyms and abbreviations without telling us what the letters stand for. Empower powers an individual's ability to influence another person to think or behave in a manner. Hesitation, intensifiers, disqualifiers, tag questions, self-critical statements, hedges, and verbal surrogates. So public speakers need to make sure that they're very aware of their language. 6 common language issues that impact public speakers: clarity, economy, obscenity, obscure language, jargon, power, and variety. When public speakers prepare their speeches, they need to make sure that their speeches contain clear language, use few words as possible to get their point across, avoid obscenity, and be careful with obscure language, jargon, use of powerful language, and include variety. Okay, let's go ahead and watch the TED Talk. Make sure I have the right video up. Okay.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Just a show of hands, how many of you have a really busy life? Lots of things to do? Yeah, I'm not surprised, right? So much so that that common saying we have, hey, how are you doing? What do we say? Oh, I'm so busy, right? We don't say I'm fine anymore. I have a second question for you. At any point during your busy life, have you ever said to yourself, I'm missing something? Now, you don't have to answer that. I want you to think about it. We'll get back to that a little bit later. I'm here today to share with you something I believe in deeply and I'm extremely passionate about. And that is every single person has a purpose. And it is our job in this lifetime to connect with that purpose and live our passion. Now, some of you in this room I know are connected to your purpose and you're so blessed. But it's interesting because with the companies that I work in, their employees, people I come across, my own friends, even family members, society as a whole, I find that I'm hearing, I'm too busy, I'm not happy, there has to be more to this. And I ask myself, why? Why? We did not grow up this way, okay? When we're born with this clean slate, no outside influences. And in fact, so much so that we actually are connected with our passion. We're actually connected with our purpose. It's like a whisper, and kids do an amazing job of listening. And they play, and their imaginations are big, and they are soaring high. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. That's why we love watching kids. It's magical. But as life moves on, so do we. And we grow older. And we get social norms start making our decisions. We get pressure with expectations from our parents, friends, other family members. Even more so today, we're connected, right? We have this outside connection with social media, the likes, the bings, the dings. So much so that we're so focused, I like to call it this external white noise, the white noise of life. And we're always focused on this external outwardness. So much so, have you ever been in a restaurant, saw two people at a table, and they're not even talking to each other, but they're on their phones? Right? Of course. Now, interestingly enough, we're so busy on that external, we are sometimes forgetting about our own internal, that purpose, that passion. We can get on autopilot very easily with our routines. Have you ever driven somewhere and wondered how you got there? I have, right? And of course, life starts to get busier, and we start to lose that connectivity to our original passion that we had at a much younger age. And of course, we have obligations, we have our to-do lists, but they're all important because we actually have obligations to our family members, our friends, professionally. We are supposed to get things done. But what's happening more and more that I'm seeing is that we have this checklist and we get lulled into thinking that we're doing by performing all of these tasks externally. And as life moves on, in the famous words of John Lennon, life is happening to you while you're busy making other plans. I was like that. I don't know, maybe some of you are as well. But you have to understand something about me. I'm an organizer, a planner. That's just who I am. In fact, the work that I do is continuous improvement. I'm constantly looking for something. How do I do it better? So I was doing this checklist, task, getting things done. But there was something deep inside me that I really wasn't feeling that I was connecting with. So I did a vision board because I was told, oh my God, do a vision board, it'll help you. I love the visuals, that resonated, but I really found it was just as superficial, it was still that externalness. So when I was in business, I thought, hey, vision statements, companies do it all the time. I did my own personal vision statement. That was actually better. I was really grateful for that because it made me think. But still, it wasn't enough. I still felt like I was on this cycle, this hamster wheel of life, doing a lot but getting nowhere. Doing a lot but getting nowhere. So what I recognize and realize is I have to do something about this because it's driving me nuts. I need to move forward, but how do I do it? So I do what I do when I need to figure things out, and that is I start doing research, right? How do I go about doing this? How do I get better? I'm a continuous improvement person. I'm all about the next thing. And how do I get better at it? So I started reading journals, and I started reading scientific papers, and a lot of things that I knew before definitely resonated, and part of that was we're visual learners, right? Most of us are, about 65% of us, and that really resonated with me. I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. I'm connected with being a visual learner. I also read that the way we process visually a lot faster than we do text. It's like, okay, that's cool. Now, I really came across this cool study which talked about art and how if you have deep information, you want to actually portray it and how the power of art can help you retain information. I went, wow, that's really cool. Now, when I'm trying to improve and get better, I also realized I got to go back to definitions. I had a benchmark. I said, okay, so what is it that I really want? I want a vision. I want to get better. I knew those are things that were going to help me. So I went and I found this definition that truly resonated with me. And I thought, wow, okay, vision is an inspiring description of what you would like to achieve in the long-term future. to serve as a clear guide for choosing current and future courses of action. And that was amazing. I had some light bulb moments that totally went off for me, and I went, whoa, my first aha moment. And that moment was telling me that, Adriana, you were on the right path, you had to go deeper. You forgot about your passion, you forgot about your purpose. You need to figure out what that is. Doing this external stuff wasn't getting you anywhere. Guess what? I got to go inward. I also found that my vision is not just something to be out there, it's something to use. My compass, my GPS, my Google Maps. The ability to say yes and no to things so that I know that whatever I'm doing is aligned with who I am, what I love. And that's exactly what I did. I went, okay, I'm going to take the power of visuals, because there's something there, right? Really cool. I'm going to align it with the power of going in depth, more so than just a 30-second elevator speech that vision statements can give us. I wanted something that had more meat and potatoes. So I did these very specific exercises that made me analyze who I was. It was a little bit scary, right? I had to ask some hard questions. Some of them I didn't want to answer. And I think the busyness covered it up for so long. But when I did, I got something really powerful, and I want to share that with you right now, my own personal visual vision statement. So here are the words: to be authentic in everything I do by honoring and empowering myself and respecting and listening to those around me through love and guidance. Adriana Girdler. That's me. Now, 30-second elevator speech, not enough. But as soon as I started adding colors and symbols and icons that had stories, all of a sudden I had this powerful tool that was going to allow me to truly make decisions, use it as a compass. So much so, with the research I did, I went, wait a minute, this is powerful stuff. It's really resonating with me. I need to now totally be surrounded with it so that I know what to say yes to when the doors of opportunity come knocking. So what I did is I turned it into artwork. I actually have it on my computer screen. This is in my office, my home office, mouse pad, phone, Facebook, my webpage. You know, like, I'm serious. I have it everywhere because I want to be able to see it. I want to connect with it. What I love about this is until I went in depth and I asked the hard questions, there's a lot of stuff on my personal visual vision that I didn't even think about. I want to bring your attention to the musical notes. I did not realize how important music was to me until I started the process of creating my own visual vision statement. Music feeds my soul. I didn't realize that. When I was younger, I actually played piano, right? And then I got 16, I was like, I don't want to play piano anymore. I want to hang with my friends. I don't want to practice. So I dropped it, right? Those pressures, the busyness of life started to kick in. And about 12 years ago, I made the decision to take up guitar and start singing. No, I don't have a guitar here. No, I'm not going to start singing for you, although I do push myself to do stuff like that. And with those musical notes, I want to bring your attention to this because there's a story behind it. My second aha moment, which was powerful for me, and that is, I had a friend of mine, Adam Michael, amazing musician, and what he would come over to my house, help me, we jam, have a good time. So, but a few years back, he said, you know, Adriana, I think you're ready to record your own song. Whew, that felt really good. Compliment too, because he's like an amazing musician. But, and there's always a but, right? But you have to write your own song. Whew. Barriers went up. I gave him every excuse under the sun. No way, can't do it. I'm way too busy. And those were all legitimate excuses, and they were true. I was really busy. I had a lot of client work on the go. I had some traveling, kids' activities, all of that stuff. And I said no. So he walked out of my house, right? I walked to my basement. I go to my office door, open it, and this is what I saw. And you know what I said? But bleep, bleep, but bleep. Oh, I got angry. I was like, oh, now I have to do it. I was getting aggravated that I had to follow my own vision. Picked up the phone. Fine, Adam, fine. Yes, Adam, I'll do it. I'm getting agitated at Adam because I'm saying yes to my vision. I found that interesting. I found that really interesting because I was afraid. I was afraid. Now, when you are connected to your purpose and you take the time to find out what your passion is and you live it, you'll be amazed at how quickly things flow. The very next weekend, I created the lyrics to my own song. We actually went, and Adam and I did the instrumentals, and we went into the recording studio. And it was the most amazing experience ever in my life. So much so that I feel I created my own personal theme song, which was really cool. Now, when I was in that recording studio, I was like, holy smokes, there's something here. You know when you get that intuition and those goosebumps in certain situations? I had no idea what it meant. I just knew something was here. So at the same time, what was going on, I was finishing up a big project with a client, and we were doing our, what we call after-action reviews, for those of you who do that stuff, and we're saying, yeah, everything was cool, good. I said, you know what, because I'm also good friends with them, I want to share with you something I'm excited about. I created my own song. I kind of consider it my own personal theme song. Do you want to listen to it? They said, yeah. So I play it on my iPhone, because I carry everything with me, right? It's everywhere. So on my iPhone, I play. They're listening to it, and as they're listening to it, literally, this whisper from my heart says, ask them if they want a corporate theme song. And then I had a lump in my throat, which was fear. Song ended. They were like, wow, that was great. I knew I literally had a split second to say something, and I said, do you want your own corporate theme song? And they looked at each other, they said, oh my God, that's an amazing idea. We were just saying how our team, who was working on that project, the rest of the group really wanted to get involved, and this would be a cool way to do it. I said, well, I've never done one before. Let me figure it out, and I'll get back to you. And they ultimately said yes. We went into a recording studio. We found out who the musicians were in the group. We found out who the singers were in the group. We connected to their own departmental vision. We created a song, went to a recording studio, made a video. How cool is that? Right? How cool is that? So much so, guess what? I now offer it as a service in my own company. And if you would have said 10 years ago, Adrienne, as a productivity and efficiency expert, by the way, you're going to create music videos, I'd be like, you're nuts. How in the heck? That doesn't jive to me. But actually, it was the most perfect fit in the whole wide world. Now, I tell you that not because of the music videos. What was my answer to Adam? It was no. The only reason why I said yes is because I saw this. That's it. If it was written down on a piece of paper, like something on the left, there's no way I would have seen it. The only reason why I said yes was because I saw it. And it was instantaneous. Remember, my compass, my Google Maps in life, what to say yes and no to. So now I ask you the question, how many times have you said no to opportunities? We say it all the time. Now, remember when I asked you earlier on, have you ever at any point felt like you were missing something in your life? Could those opportunities that were presented to you, that we have no idea what it's going to lead to, could have been something that was connecting you to your purpose, but you said no to it? I know, it was powerful stuff for me. When I got that aha, which was my second aha, I was like, oh my God. I have this responsibility now to connect and say yes to the right things. I want you to do me a favor, point to yourself. Everybody point to yourself. Where are you pointing? Most of you are pointing here. Some of you are pointing here, okay? That's okay. Absolutely okay. We call this the heart center. This is where our purpose and passion lies. Now, do me another favor. Take your hand and put it on your heart center. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And if not, lower your gaze. Now take a moment to listen to the whisper of your heart. What is it telling you? If you want to go to the next level in your life, you do need to be connected to your purpose. You need to live your passion. But you also need a tool to get you there, because I promise you the busyness of life will get in the way. So to go to that next level, you do need a visual vision. You need your own personal Google Maps. Once you know exactly what is it that you're about and what you're passionate about. Because vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. And vision with action can change the world. Thank you.
All right, well, that was a good video, everybody. Let's look and see what our next chapter is. It's delivering a speech. And we just watched our speaker talk about passion and believing in yourself and taking a stand. And she talked about how she played some music, and then she talked about selling her product. And I love the idea. And now she continues that. We have to believe in ourselves and our life mission and who we are. All right. Okay, so we deliver a speech is very important. If not, so the basic message we're trying to convey to the audience. But if you worked hard on preparing nonverbal part of your speech, you may feel that the delivery is just an extra. It shouldn't require much effort. But like I mentioned to you, when we're speaking, we can add the emphasis there. We can add the exclamation marks, and make it exciting for the person listening to us versus reading it. It's carefully constructed, logically crafted, ethical message. The words alone should engage your audience's attention and interest, right? After the work of building such a message, you might wish that you could simply read it to the audience. However, this is just the case in a few kinds of circumstances when the message is highly technical, complex, or extremely important as medical discovery, when international protocols and etiquette are critically important and the world is listening, or when the speaker is representing a high-ranking person, such as a president or a king, who is unable to be present. For the purposes of your public speaking class, you should not be encouraged to read your speech. Instead, you will be asked to give an extemporaneous presentation. So, through the use of your eye contact, your vocal expression, your body posture, your gestures, your facial display, you can enhance your message and invite your audience to give their serious attention to it, and your credibility, your serenity, your sincerity, and the knowledge to your speech become apparent through your nonverbal behaviors. And the interplay between verbal and nonverbal components of your speech can either bring a message vividly to life or confuse and bore the audience. Therefore, it's best that you either over-dramatize your speech delivery behaviors nor downplay them. This is a balance achieved through rehearsal, trial and error, and experience. For methods of delivery, the easiest approach to speech delivery is not always the best. Substantial work goes in careful preparation of interesting ethical message. It's understandable that students may have impulse to avoid messing it up by simply reading it for word, but students who do not miss out on one of the major reasons for studying public speaking, to learn ways to connect with one's audience and to increase one's confidence in doing so. You already know how to read and you already know how to talk, but public speaking is neither reading nor talking, and speaking in public is more formally than talking. During a speech, you should present yourself professionally. This doesn't mean you must wear a suit or dress up unless your instructor asks you to. Then we have impromptu speaking. That's a short message in advance of preparation. Usually the tool just to speak on the spot. Maybe your teacher gives you a topic and you don't have any time to plan. You just speak on top of your mind. There's some games with impromptu. Or maybe you're asked to act out a skit. All right, time for another video. Video time. Video time. So we just watched Ariana's Attention to the Whisper. The whisper was inside of her. This is why we fear public speaking. This is about 10 minutes.
20 campus locations.
A year ago, I was asked to preach a sermon in my beloved spiritual community at my church. The only thing is, I'm a comedian, not a minister. My friend said, "Oh, Taylor, this will be a breeze for you. You're a storyteller, you're an improviser, you're kind of a ham." Well, let me tell you, being a ham doesn't help you preach a sermon. And I was utterly and uncharacteristically nervous. I love public speaking. I think about it, I write about it, I teach it, I even think about it in my sleep. But in this case, my palms were sweaty, my heart beat fast, and I feared I would forget everything I had prepared. Maybe you know what that feels like. But this was a great exercise in empathy for me in the work that I do, because I coach a lot of people who are terrified of public speaking and the vulnerabilities surrounding it. So in this case, I wasn't telling a story, I wasn't doing improv or trying to be a ham. I was preaching, and the stakes felt high, and I felt vulnerable, and I wanted to crush it as much as you can crush a sermon. But that was all it took for me to feel all the nerves. I guess the good news is I'm not alone. The fear of public speaking ranks amongst the worst phobias for adults. In fact, it ranks right up there with the fear of death. Kind of puts it in perspective, doesn't it? The comedian Jerry Seinfeld famously said that means you'd rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. Makes the prospects of becoming a more confident public speaker feel pretty grim. In fact, I'm willing to bet that some of you out there are feeling anxious with just me talking about public speaking. But before you start to freak out, let me tell you why trying to understand this fear is so important and why we all have hopes of becoming more proficient, confident public speakers. I have a secret I'd like to share with you. I think the reason why we are all so terrified of public speaking and why we think we're all so horrific at it is because we're actually defining public speaking in the wrong way. Maybe you think of it as talking to a large group of strangers with a huge PowerPoint behind you, or making a pitch to a group of colleagues, or presenting something in class full of your peers, or leading a virtual meeting. And certainly all of those are examples. But I think we need to define it much more broadly than that. I think we need to think of public speaking as the way we present ourselves to the world. And if we look at it that way, then we can see that we're engaging in some form of public speaking pretty much every day. Think about introducing yourself for the first time and making that back and forth getting to know you banter, or making small talk at a party, going out for an interview, or going on a first date. All of these are examples of public speaking if we can change our framework to see that. And in all of these cases, we're not only trying to uphold our confidence in our knowledge of whatever subject matter we're talking about, but we're also trying to present our most authentic self at the same time. So yeah, that can feel like a lot. In our shows and workshops, we give out surveys to ask people whether they love public speaking or whether they hate it. And then there's a series of follow-up questions that ask them any tips or tricks they've received along the way that help them with their anxiety around public speaking. And what's fascinating is, whether someone loves public speaking or they hate it, their answers to the open-ended questions are largely the same. Everyone's fear lies in the fear of being judged. There are nuances and differences to those responses, but it's pretty much true for everyone. Judgment is just too painful to face. When you're a human being trying to present yourself to the world, it's fraught with fear and insecurity because it's so raw and real and vulnerable. And larger research studies show us the same. They're ranking right up there with the fear of public speaking and death are the fears of inadequacy, failure, rejection, and judgment. It's hard to hear, isn't it? And the opposite of these fears and hurts are the desire to feel known and seen and heard and understood. Isn't that what we all want? As an important side note, you should know that in those surveys I mentioned, both lovers and haters of public speaking agree that the worst advice they've ever received around public speaking is to picture your audience naked or in their underwear, like I'm doing to all of you right now. Just kidding. It turns out that doesn't work for people. It's never worked for me either. Let's move on. Let's talk about some tangible tips and tricks to become a more proficient, confident public speaker or presenter of yourself to the world. Now, it's hard. This isn't going to happen in one day, so be gentle with yourself. Let's make it less scary, shall we? Okay, number one, open up your body. Breathe into it. 93% of what we communicate to our audience is through our body language. It lets them know that you're okay, but it also lets you know that you're okay. And you're okay. Open up, breathe, smile, blink, unclench your fists. Number two, find your yes person. There is someone in every audience who is nodding and smiling and validating you. Love that person. As you look around, scanning the room, check in with them to feel comfortable and encouraged. My mom always says that public speaking should feel like you're talking to your best friend. And that person in the back, slumped down with their arms crossed and scrolling through their Twitter feed the whole time, that's not your person. Don't worry about that person. And number three, be yourself. Like, seriously act like yourself. If you have a great sense of humor, use it. If you like to think and speak in sports analogies, sprinkle a couple of those in. Be yourself and let them enjoy you. They came to see you, to hear you. And besides, believe me when I say, they are so glad it's you up there doing the public speaking and not them. And as you improve, remember to count all of your successes, no matter how small they might seem. You make that pitch to all of your colleagues and you don't break out in hives, count it. You make small talk at the church potluck? Oh, heck yes, you did. You make that class presentation and you sweat through that gray t-shirt, but your voice didn't crack? Nailed it. Count each and every win. And as you do, also remember that failure is inevitable, normal, and helpful, because failure is just as authentic as success. And as you go around presenting yourself as a human being to the world, remember that it's never you against your audience. No one is supposed to win. In many ways, public speaking is an ongoing conversation where you become more of a part of your audience by speaking to them and teaching them, and they become more a part of you by listening and learning. And we all get stronger that way. What I want you to take away from all of this is that public speaking is not about perfection. It's woven into our everyday experience. It's about the way that we interact with the people in the world around us and how we want to present ourselves in those interactions. And we can get better day by day by taking our successes and our failures and just making small improvements. So let's take public speaking and see it as a representation of our truest, most authentic selves and a celebration of that in others. And the great news is, no one has to picture anyone else in their underwear, which is a victory in and of itself. Thank you.
The first ever all-electric Chevy Silverado. A whole new truck for a whole new generation.
Trying to get off this special. Okay. Okay. All right, so that's why some people are scared of speaking. It's no reason to be scared. We see people all the time, you know, psyching themselves out. You don't need to. And this is how I overcame my fear of public speaking.
My name is Danish, and my full-time job is to count people's ums and uhs and like. It all started at my first day of school, after my family moved from Pakistan to Tanzania. I was busy sketching my dream cars in my notebook, and all of a sudden I hear a voice in my direction, the teacher. Danish, can you please rise up and introduce yourself? She had put me on the spot. I was in this foreign land, 30 pairs of eyes staring at me. How would you feel when a teacher puts you on the spot in this kind of situation? My mind went blank. My heart started racing. I kept quiet. I started hearing giggles in the classroom, and then tears ran down my cheek. That was the first time I felt the fear of speaking in front of others. The first time I felt the fear of public speaking. Fast forward a few years, I was at college here in America. That fear still stuck with me. It was as though it was part of my soul. Now, when I was little, I had many other fears. I was afraid of the dark, the monsters under my bed, the cockroaches, and I don't mean the tiny cockroaches here, but the big flying cockroaches I had back home in Pakistan and Tanzania. But I outgrew these fears. I overcame them as I grew older. But public speaking, no way. I was still afraid of it. But I decided enough was enough. I decided to do something about it, to take that step and find a solution. And so I went to the one place on the internet where we all look for problems to our solution, to our problems, Google. I searched on Google how to overcome the fear of public speaking. The first link told me about the great things I could be if I overcame this fear. Sound like a leader, get a great job, share your ideas, give a TED Talk. changed the world. The second link showed me all the different ways I could overcome this fear. Hire a speech coach, talk in front of the mirror, do online courses, attend public speaking clubs like Toastmasters. That's when I realized that I had it wrong all this time. I thought you were either born a public speaker or you're not. I was wrong. I realized that public speaking is actually a teachable skill. That means that if any one of you here wants to speak powerfully, like any of your famous public speakers, yes, you can. We all can. Now, some of these solutions worked for me, others not so much. Like hiring a speech coach, that was outside of my student budget. But online courses, that's where I learned how to vary my tone up and down, how to talk really, really fast so that I could get someone excited, or to slow right down to get someone's attention. And I practiced. I practiced in front of the mirror. At least that's where I had one friend who thought I was good. As for the public speaking club, Toastmasters, that was fantastic. I got to go in front of others, and I got feedback on what I did good and what I did bad. So I did all these things, and I realized that first I was trapped in this cold, dark hole where the fear of public speaking haunted at me. It pulled me down. And over here was this promise of sunshine, of green pastures, no anxiety. But the path from here to here was all over the place. I had to do all these things. And I thought to myself, there had to be one simpler way. There had to be one way that I could go from here and leap to here. So I went back to Google, the source of all wisdom, did some research, and I started learning and reading a lot about artificial intelligence, about these personal assistants we have in our pocket, like Siri, Alexa, who understand what we're saying. Hey Siri, what's the next meeting I have?
Okay, here's your meeting.
They understand what we say. What if they could also understand how you're saying something and analyze your voice? What if they could be your speech coaches? What if every single person in the world, anywhere, had their own personal, on-demand speech coach? Can you imagine a world where anyone has this help to help them overcome this fear of public speaking, to help them speak powerfully, to help them share their ideas? That's the idea that got us started. That's the idea that helped us create Orai, Oral AI, a mobile app that counts your ums and uhs, a mobile app that gives you personalized lessons, a place to practice them quietly, in privacy, and an app that gives you instant feedback using artificial intelligence. Now, a year and a half ago when my roommate and I started building this, we were no experts. All we knew is that we want to build something. We want to create a solution. We were no speech coaches. We were no public speakers. We were no data scientists. But we had the power of the internet. So we read a bunch of research papers on computational linguistics. We spoke with hundreds of speech coaches, trying to understand how they give feedback on their speech. We watched videos on machine learning and artificial intelligence so that we could codify all these things and create this app. Because we believe that we can use technology to help people become better versions of ourselves. And the reason I'm sharing my story with you guys today is not to tell you guys, go out and build apps or be entrepreneurs. I'm saying, go out and face your fears. Don't bury them deep inside. If you have a problem, look for a solution. If nothing exists, create that solution. If you don't have the skills, go to Google. Find how you can improve your knowledge and create something. For me, it all started when I was little. That first time I felt the fear of public speaking. That's what empowered me to act. That's what empowered me to go on this journey of becoming a better speaker. And this journey is never ending. You will never see the finish line. In fact, there is no finish line in public speaking. You can always get better. Remember that. You can always become a better speaker. You only stop if you tell yourself you're good enough. Thank you.
You only stop. Good advice. I mean, that'd be so good, right? If that's the issue that you have.
By the way, I was recording my speech. Let's see what feedback Ori gives. Okay, so I had a few filler words like, and My pace, okay, 107 words per minute, not too bad. Good energy. And then some feedback Ori is giving. Almost perfect. I think I need to practice a little bit more. And it's saying, looks like you'll be hosting a TED Talk at no time. And my speech clarity, A+, and my transcript. And I can even play back my audio and listen to itself. My name is Danish, and my full-time job is to count. Check it out.
All right, so cool. So an impromptu speech, that would not be like the speeches we just watched today. Impromptu speech would be like maybe you're getting an award and they put you on the spot to talk. You only have like a moment, a couple seconds to maybe get your thoughts, a plan, main ideas you want to make. You want to thank a person for inviting you to the speech. Deliver your message, making it plain point as briefly as you can, while covering it adequately at your own pace. Your speakers can follow. Thank the person again for the opportunity to speak. Stop talking. As you can see, impromptu speeches are generally most successful when they're brief and focus on the main point. Extemporaneous speaking is the presentation of a carefully planned and rehearsed speech spoken in conversational manner using brief notes. By using notes rather than a full manuscript, the extemporaneous speaker can establish main eye contact with the audience and assess how well they're understanding the speech as it progresses. The opportunity to assess is also opportunity to restate more clearly an idea or concept that the audience seems to have trouble grasping. For instance, suppose you're speaking about workplace safety and you use the term sleep deprivation. If you notice your audience eyes glazing over, this might be a result of their own sleep deprivation, but rather an indication of uncertainty about what you mean. If this happens, you can add a short explanation. For example, sleep deprivation is sleep loss, serious enough to threaten one's cognition, hand-to-eye coordination, judgment, and emotional health. Speaking from manuscript, maybe it's word for word. And written message in a manuscript speech, the speaker maintains his or her attention on a printed page, except when they're using visual aids. The advantage is reading from a manuscript is the exact repetition of original words. As mentioned in the beginning of the chapter, in some circumstances could be extremely important. For example, reading a statement about your organization's legal responsibilities to customers may require the original words to be exact. In the reading of this one word at a time in order, the only errors would typically be mispronunciation of a word or stumbling over complex sentence structure. However, the cost involved in manuscript speaking first is typically an interesting way to present, unless the speaker has rehearsed the meeting as a complete performance, animated with vocal expression and gestures. As poets do in poetry slam and actors do in readers' theater, the representation tends to be dull. Keeping one eye glued, the script preludes eye contact within the audience. For the kind of straight manuscript speech to hold audience attention, the audience must be already interested in the message before the delivery begins. It's worth noting that professional speakers, actors, news reporters, and politicians often read from an outcome device like a teleprompter, especially when appearing on television where the eye contact with the camera is crucial. With practice, a speaker can achieve a non-conversational tone and give the impression of speaking extemporaneously while using an auto cue device. However, success in this medium depends on two factors. One, the audience is already an accomplished public speaker who learned to use his conversational tone while delivering a prepared speech. And two, the speech is written in a style that sounds conversational. Speaking from memory, memorize speaking at the rote recitation of a written message a speaker has committed to memory. Actors, of course, recite from memory whenever they perform, from a script to a stage play, television program, or a movie scene. There are 4 main kinds of speech delivery: impromptu, extemporaneous, manuscript, and memorized. Impromptu speaking involves delivering a message on the spur of the moment, as when someone asks if you say words. Extemporaneous speaking consists of delivering a speech in a conversational fashion using notes and the style most speeches call for. Manuscript speaking consists of reading a fully scripted speech. It's useful when a message needs to be delivered from precise words. And memorized speaking consists of reciting a scripted speech from memory. Memorization follows the speaker to be free of notes. We can be using lecterns. Lectern is a small raised surface, usually with a slanted top where the speaker can place notes during the speech. While lectern adds a measure of formality during the speaking situation, it also allows speakers the freedom to do different things: to come out from behind the lectern, to establish more immediate contact with the audience, to use both hands for gestures. However, the new speakers who feel anxious, it's too tempting to grasp the edges of the lantern with both hands for security. You might even wish you could hide behind it. Be aware of these temptations so you can manage them effectively to present yourself with the audience in a manner they will perceive as confident. One way to achieve this is by limiting your use of the lectern to simply place in the rest of your notes. Try to stepping in the side or the front of the lectern when speaking with your free hands. Only occasionally standing at the lectern to consult your notes. This will enhance your eye contact as well as free up your hands for gesturing. Speaking in smaller, large physical space, if you're accustomed to being in a classroom of a certain size, you may need to make adjustments when speaking in a smaller or larger space than you're used to. A large auditorium may be intimidating, especially for speakers who feel shy and exposed when facing an audience. However, the maximum that proper preparation prevents poor performance is that it's true here anywhere. If you're prepared and prevents poor performance is true, but if you're prepared and well practiced well, you can approach a large venue of speaking engagement and confidence. In terms of practical adjustments, be aware that your voice is likely to echo, so you want to speak more slowly than usual and use pauses to mark the ends of phrases and sentences. Similarly, your facial expressions and gestures should be so large that they're visible from far away. If you're using visual aids, they may need to be large enough to be visible from the back of the auditorium. Limited space is not discerning for most speakers as enormous space, but advantage of minimizing the tendency to pace back and forth while you speak. We all have seen dramatic soliloquies in the movies and plays where the actor makes use of the space on the stage, but it's generally not a good strategy for a speech. A small space also calls for more careful management of note cards and visual aids. Your audience is able to see up close what you're doing with your hands. Do your best to minimize fumbling, including setting up advance or arriving early. Decide how to organize your materials in the physical space. Speaking outdoors, outdoor setting can be charming, but they're prone to distractions. If you're given a speech in a setting as picturely beautiful, it may be difficult to maintain audience attention. If you know ahead of time, you might plan your speech to focus more on the mood than information and perhaps make reference to the lovely view. More typically, outdoor speech venues can pose challenges with weather, sun glare, and uninvited guests such as ants and pigeons. If the venue is located near a busy highway, it might be difficult to make yourself head over the ambient noise. You might lack the unusual accommodations such as a lectern or table. Whatever the situation, you may need to use your best efforts to project your voice clearly without sounding like yelling. And using your microphone. Most people today are familiar with microphones that are built into the video recorders and other electronic devices, and they may be new at using a microphone to deliver a speech. One overall principle to remember is that a microphone only amplifies, it does not clarify. If you're not enunciation clearly, the microphone will merely enhance your audience to a near amplified mumbly. Microphones come in a wide variety of styles and sizes. Generally, the easiest microphone to use is clip-on style, worn on the front of your shirt. If you look closely at the television personalities and news anchors, you will notice these tiny microphones clip to clothing. They require a little adaptation. You simply have to avoid looking down at your notes, for instance, because your voice will be amplified when you do so. We could use lantern and held hand microphones. They require more adaptation. They're too close to your mouth, they can screech. If they're too far away, they might pick up your voice. Some microphones are directional, meaning they are only effective when you speak directly into them. And often the microphone is provided when it isn't necessary. If the room is small or the audience is close to you, do not feel obligated to use the microphone. Sometimes the amplified voice can feel less natural and less compelling than the direct voice. However, if you forego the microphone, make sure to speak loudly enough for the audience members to hear you, not just those in the front. The small audience is an opportunity for a more intimate, minimally formal tone. If your audience has only 8 to 12 people, you can generate a greater audience content. Make sure the preparation you have done. Not every speaking is setting in the classroom. As such, different environments call for speakers to think through their basic speaking strategies. Speakers need to be prepared to deal with 5 common challenges in speaking, and that could be using a lectern, large or small space, speaking outdoors, and using a microphone and audience size. Don't forget to use your notes. The purpose of the speaker notes. Using 8 notes can add your credibility as a speaker. If you depend on full manuscript to get through your delivery, your listeners might believe that you don't know the content of your speech. Second, the temptations to read the entire speech directly from manuscript, even if you're only carrying it as safely net, is nearly overwhelming. Third, well-prepared cards are more gracefully handled than the sheets of paper, and they don't rattle if your hands tremble from the nervousness. And hold your notes naturally. Notes are a normal part of the presentation. You don't need to conceal them from the audience. In fact, trying to hide and use your notes at the same time tends to be very awkward and distracting. Some instructors recommend that you avoid gesturing your notes in the grounds. That nervous shaking is more noticeable if you're holding your notes in your hand. If this is the case for you, practice gesturing with your free hand or put your cards down if you need both hands. Other instructors recommend treating note cards as a natural extension of your hand. They believe it's distracting if you put your notes down and pick them up again. Whatever rule you follow, remember that the goal is for you to use your note cards to contribute to your overall appearance of the confidence and credibility. Prepare note cards to recall. The trick to selecting the words. The note cards identify the keywords that trigger the recall sequence. For instance, of the word Fukushima brings to mind a nuclear power plant meltdown followed by earthquake and tsunami. Then the word in your note card should propel you to the sizable sequence of points and details. You can write in large letters, use the note cards efficiently. It's your note, so you can put whatever you want to on it because you're the ones reading it. Good note cards keep you from reading to your audience. Good note cards are carefully based on your keywords and phrases to promote recall. And good note cards should enhance your relationship with listeners. You do want to practice successful speech delivery. It's like a foolproof recipe for good delivery. Each of us is unique and we each embody different experiences and interests. This means a person has an approach or a style that's effective to his or her. The further means that anxiety can accompany even the most carefully rehearsed and interesting message. Even when we know our messages are strong and well articulated in paper, it's difficult to know that representation will be good. What is good delivery? More than you care about your audience, the greater your motivation to present it well. Good delivery is a process of presenting clear, coherent message in an interesting way. Communication scholar Stephen E. Lucas says, good delivery conveys the speaker's ideas clearly, interesting, and without distracting audience. Most audiences prefer delivery to combine a certain degree of formality with the best attributes of a good conversation: directiveness, spontaneity, animation, vocal and facial expressiveness, and a lively sense of communication. Conversational style is the speaker's ability to sound expressive and be perceived by the audience natural. It's a style that approaches the way you normally express yourself in much smaller groups than your classroom audience. This means that you want to avoid having your presentation come across as dialectic and overly exaggerated. You might not feel natural while you're using a conversational style, but for the sake of appearance, preference, and receptiveness, you should do your best to appear natural. It might be helpful to remember that the two most important elements to your speech are message and audience. You're to conduct with important role, putting the two together in an effective way, and your audience should be thinking about the message, not the delivery. Stephen E. Lucas defines conversational quality as an idea that no matter how many times a speech has been rehearsed, it still sounds spontaneous. No one wants to hear a speech that's well rehearsed that sounds fake or robotic. And the hardest part of public speaking is rehearsing to the point where it can appear that your audience has the thoughts are magically coming from you while you're speaking. But in reality, you spent a great deal of time thinking about each idea. When you sound conversational, people could pay attention. Don't forget eye contact. Eye contact is a speaker's way of ability to have visual contact with everyone in the audience. Your audience should feel that you're speaking to them, not simply uttering main and supporting points. If you're new to the public speaking, you may find it intimidating to look audience members in the eye. But if you think about speakers you have seen who do not maintain eye contact, you realize why the aspect of speech delivery is important. Without eye contact, the audience begins to feel invisible and unimportant, as if the speaker is just speaking to his or her voice. And eye contact lets the audience feel and pay attention to them, not solely on cards in front of you. Sustained eye contact with audience is one of the most important tools toward effective delivery. O'Hare, Stewart, Robinson note that eye contact is mandatory for speakers to establish a good relationship with the audience. Effective use of Volex. We can use Volex or paralanguage. It's a subfield in nonverbal communication that examines how our voices to communicate orally. Volume. Don't forget your volume, the loudness or softness of a speaker's voice. As mentioned, public speakers need to speak loudly enough to be heard by everyone in the audience. And rate. The rate is the speed which a person speaks. To keep your speech delivery interesting, your speech should vary. And the pitch. It refers to the highness or the lowness of a speaker's voice. Some speakers have deep voices and others have high voices. Pauses or brief breaks in the speaker's delivery that can show emphasis and enhance the clarity of a message. Vocal variety has a lot to do with the changes in the Vocolex we've discussed. Volume, pitch, rate, and pauses. Pronunciation. The last major category related to the Vocolex is pronunciation, or the conventional patterns of speech used to form a word. Word pronunciation is important for two reasons. First, mispronouncing a word and your audience is familiar will harm your credibility as a speaker. And second, mispronunciations of word are unfamiliar with you can confuse or even misinform. If there's any possibility at all that you don't know the correct punctuation of a word, find out. There's many online dictionaries, such as you can use the Wikipedia. We have self-presentation. We have variety. You could use audio and visual to record yourself. Nowadays, everybody has a YouTube or TikTok. Good delivery as a habit. Don't forget that Volex are the nonverbal components of the verbal language, and there are 6 important volectic components the speaker is aware of. Volume, loudness, softness, pitch, highness or lowness, rate, fastness and slowness, pauses, use of breaks to add emphasis, vocal variety, use of range of voletic strategies, and pronunciation using conventional patterns of speech formation. Well, that concludes today. I'm going to go ahead and send everybody their questions. Have a great day. Bye.